Good evening. I'm Mayor Javier Figueroa, and I'm calling the regular meeting for the City of University Place Council for Monday, July the 1st, 2024, to order. And we'll start with a roll call, and with the city clerk, please do the roll call.
Councilmember Boykin.
Here.
Councilmember Worthington.
Here.
Councilmember McCluskey.
I'm here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Grossi.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Present.
Mayor Figueroa.
Present. And will Councilmember Grassi honor us with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, Mayor, please join me in our pledge to our country.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move on to item number 4, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as written.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the agenda unanimously approved. And we'll move on to public comments. And we're now in the portion of that agenda, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments to the City Council about any issues not apparent on the agenda or the consent agenda. And so we do have one person present that has signed up to speak. So Dennis Flan. And as you all know, give your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Dennis Flan, 2623 Lemons Beach Road. I'm here to make comment about the EV chargers that you planned on possibly putting in the Cirque Park. I think this is one of the worst ideas I've heard for a while because of the copper theft that's going on. We had previously had problems with the theft of our wire for our lights up there, and I think that bringing more attention to the area might cause more theft of our own goods outside of the EV chargings. My personal thoughts on EV charging is that you should become personally responsible for an extension cord for each vehicle that you can attach to the station and then to your own vehicle. Therefore, you could go across country and you could find a station that didn't have its cord cut off, and everybody would have a cord to do their own work. So a place where public exposure is constant would be much better. Cirque Park is somewhat out away from things, and I do believe that's a poor place to put these stations. Convenient for people possibly, but also convenient for thieves, unfortunately. And also Washington State has one of the worst copper thefts of those plugs, which cost about $2,000 each to replace. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Okay, there's no one else present, so I'll move on to those that are online. Anyone on the phone? Okay, there's nobody online or on the phone for comments, so we'll go ahead and end the public comments section. We'll move on to the 6A and B, and that's consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve or amend the consent agenda as proposed?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as proposed.
I second it.
Were there any objection to approving the consent agenda? I don't hear none, so the motion passes unanimously. And we'll move on to council consideration, item number 7, and that is the early redemption of outstanding bonds. And we have a staff report by Eric Fiasan, Assistant City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Tonight, before you is the opportunity to refund or repay a little over half of the city's outstanding debt, so $17.1 million. The intention is to include this as part of the Council's 2025-2026 budget. This would be paid off in the middle of 2026, assuming that the interest rates at the time are favorable to the city. So there's a resolution before you that would effectuate that or authorize the city manager to do so under those circumstances. Any questions?
Well, at this time, we have points of clarification. Please be mindful of that, and not for debate at this time. So I saw Councilmember Fleming putting his hand up first, so Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eric, would this also be subject to being supported by the budget, whatever budget we pass this year?
It wouldn't be, yes, so you would be passing the budget by this December, maybe November, if we're lucky, and it wouldn't obviously take place until the middle of 2026.
Excuse me, but would you speak to the mic?
Sorry. This thing's a little janky. There we go. So, can you hear me now?
Better.
Sorry
Thank you.
about that. Yes, so it would be part of this year's adoption of the 2025-2026 budget.
Councilmember McCluskey?
Okay. I just have one question of clarification. You said if the interest is favorable, wouldn't that be part of the resolution component?
So, wouldn't it be part of the resolution?
Resolution, right, because that's an if.
That's an if.
Right. So
you're
this is a directive, but there's an if in it. So wouldn't that if be placed in here so it's not an automatic redemption if the interest rates were not favorable? Is it in the resolution document?
It
Trying to
doesn't
find
say
it.
so directly. It just says that
Yeah.
the designated representative is authorized to call the bonds for redemption,
Mm-hmm.
or any portion thereof. So if you wanted to add something like that, but obviously this is going to be something that will get council's approval
Either way.
either way. Yeah, it's,
Okay, then. It's not a material
Way
fact,
exceeds
is
the
it?
city manager's authority
Yeah.
by more than a little bit, so.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Worthington?
Eric, could you tell us a little bit about the interest savings, the result?
Yes, we're estimating, because the bonds have, at that point in time, we'll have about $4.1 million of interest that you won't have to otherwise pay. That is the projected savings. I won't get into, well, what would be any sort of offsetting loss of interest on the $17 million. That would be something that we would have to figure out as we get closer in time.
Very good, thank
I
you.
don't see anybody else, so I'll go ahead and comment. Just, not comment, but have some clarification here, Mr. Faison. And that is, on the call date, when it says that means any date on or after June 1st, do you know if it's going to be closer to June or later in December?
We're required, I believe, under the bonds to pay the June 1st interest payment, and it is redeemable, including that interest payment. So that's the earliest date in which we can actually recall the bonds and not be liable for the remaining interest payments.
What is the intent of the administration to call as soon as June comes around?
Our current intent would be to call the bonds as soon as
You can, okay,
Yeah.
all right. I don't have any other questions. Anybody else? I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and go to, excuse me a second, public comment. And at this point, it's time for anyone, members of the public or online, that would like to speak to the to this matter at hand. I don't see anybody here present. Do we have anybody online? Okay, and so we're going from public comment to council consideration. May I have a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the redemption of a portion of the city's limited tax general obligation refunding bonds 2016, authorizing the execution of documents related to such refunding and providing for other matters related thereto.
Mayor, so moved.
I wasn't making a motion, I was just reading what
Okay.
okay, so I need a...
All right, I move
Okay.
to adopt a resolution authorizing the redemption of a portion of the city's limited tax general obligation refunding bonds, 2016, authorizing the execution of documents related to such refunding, and providing for other matters related thereto.
Mayor Figueroa, I would second that.
So with that, we have discussion time here, comments, and so anyone would like to, well, I see one hand popping up, Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor Figueroa. Yes, so from my perspective, certainly we want to take the opportunity to refund these bonds. Our council for a good number of years has been working to bring that debt down. And because of the prudent policies the city has adopted, because of the skills of the staff in managing budgets and available cash and looking for ways for us to grow reserves, we've been able to accumulate enough money to pay off the bonds that are callable in 2026. And the prospect of saving 1.1, almost 1 point, of saving 4.1, almost 4.2 million of our taxpayers' dollars for other purposes is far from something I want to ignore. More something I want to embrace. And also the thought of bringing this debt down from what in 2013 was something like 54 million to what result here is about 16.3 million is also something I strongly embrace.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Well, sitting on this dais would not have dreamt that I would come here at this moment and seeing our debt so fully almost reduced to what it was when I first came on city council. But we were figuring out how to function as a city. And so your staff and all your hard work and obviously the proposals and ideas that were brought up on the dais, in the evolution of making some pretty hard decisions, which I'm sure are not forgotten, and they will not be forgotten. Everybody appreciates what the city staff did to keep our city solvent and ongoing so that we could be here at this point in time. And I'm so excited to have this before me, so thank you.
Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo Councilmember McCluskey's comments. In the evolution of the city, we've seen the ebbs and flows and the good times and the bad times, and to be here at this moment with an opportunity to reduce that debt, and again, that's kudos really to the city staff and for managing that debt and working hard to get it to where we could have this conversation and start reducing it, not just incrementally but significantly. So I think it's a good pathway and a good trajectory to success for the city, and I think this is an easy vote really to move this proposition forward and give us some even better breathing room than what we've had in the past. So thanks to all of you.
Well, if I don't see any council members, I'll have a few comments. Some of it has been said already, but I think it's important that we really speak out to this. And that is, I was here in 2010 when I took office, and citizens were really concerned about our finances. Of course, the council that was present at that point and staff. And here it is, and 14 years later is not that long. And to reduce the debt by that much signifies a few things, and a lot of it is legislative. And yes, a lot of it is administrative and how they didn't splurge, they didn't they were very conservative in their estimates. They did a lot of things right, but one of the things that allowed that to happen was this council and other council members that were here to continue to push for savings and reserves and that general the ending fund balances that continue to accumulate. And we didn't just say, let's spend it, and we could have. So we're straining ourselves to the point that we have this amount of monies, which is quite a bit for our city. I'm not sure how many cities our size in a short period of time would have been able to do what we just did, or we're about to do. And so that says a lot for how we care for this community, and that is that we're very sensitive to our debt that was taken away from being able to pay for services, and to be able to reduce this to and we'll continue to do so, to the point that any monies that we generate can go to community services, not for debt. So I'm really delighted to see us at this point. And I guess if there was any questions in this end would be, and people of the public would be, why are we doing this now versus in 2026? Why are we voting for this now? We have a budget that is we're about to deal with later on this year. It's called the 25-26 biannual budget. We'll be approving that this year. And so if we want that budget to reflect what's going to really happen in 26, we need to make this decision now so that can reflect that, and also other decisions can be made. And I do want to say to my peers here, and that is, as you know, once that happens, we will be in the short end of the stick on ending fund balances until we accumulate that 4-point-something million, and that'll take a few months. But until then, because our council goals and other things that are happening here, we need to be careful about how we encumber ourselves in the finances and what we want and what the community wants, knowing that we have this particular payment that if it does pass, we're going to be making, and our ending fund balances are going to be, not as much as we have now for any shortcomings, unforeseen things, and we have to be careful and cautious about that. So with that, I don't have any other comments. Anyone else? I don't see any, so we'll call for the vote, and will the city clerk do so?
Councilmember Boykin.
Yes.
Councilmember Worthington.
Aye.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Grassi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Aye.
Mayor Figueroa.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you. This was a big moment to see that happen. I don't know how many people really realize that. So we're moving on to item number 8, and thank you, Mr. Faison. 8, and that's the vehicle license fee, otherwise AKA Transportation Benefit District. And we'll hear from a staff report, Mr. Faison again.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And this too follows in line with the major accomplishment you just did. That was only feasible due to long-range planning. Both the council making strategic decisions about how they overall budget and whether they look long-term or not, and whether or not to expend funds in the short term when you have them, but in the long term when you might not. So for purposes of the vehicle license fee, we again do long-range planning in order to figure out what are the needs of the fund through our planning period. The council first looked at this issue, I guess we looked at it a long time ago, like in 2009 or something like that, first imposed a fee in 2013, and then have made adjustments since then, the most recent of which was in 2020, where we reduced the fee from $35 down to $10. That reduction coincided with the implementation of a utility tax, but we had been saving money from the TBD for a period of time which allowed us to reduce the fee and use those one-time savings during an interim period. Council's resolution back then suggested that you would be reviewing this again for the fee in December of 2025 for purposes of the 2026 budget. So what we did here was we looked at the street fund, particularly the pavement maintenance portion of the street fund, but also the general operations in support of that pavement maintenance, and concluded that by 2030, the fund will run out of money. You've also simultaneously been looking at the street fund's staffing and have identified some deficiencies in that regard. So during your retreat this past year, you looked at and considered whether or not this fee should be increased beginning in 2026, so not right away, but consistent with your prior resolution, in order to solve the fund's deficit, projected deficit. So before you is a resolution that would adopt and impose a $40 vehicle license fee beginning in 2026, which would balance out the street fund during our forecasted period. And do you have any questions?
Okay, clarification, comments, and questions. So we'll start with anybody. Yep, Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
So question for you. In the resolution, well, because you just stated right now, this will, this projects to make the fund healthy for, what was the final through date, 2040, as I recall?
2044.
2044. Yet in the resolution, it says there's two lines there that whereas the funding generated by the vehicle license fee will be a sustainable source of limited funding for street maintenance, but will not provide sufficient revenue to fully fund even a basic street maintenance program. And whereas in the future, the City Council may need to explore other options to fully fund a basic street maintenance program. I'm seeing a disconnect here between you're saying this funds us out through 2044, and then there's two lines in the resolution that say this doesn't. I'm kind of confused.
Where are you looking at? I'm sorry.
It's the fourth and fifth whereas.
I think that must be from an old draft. You can strike that. This will fund the street fund through 2044 according to our projections.
Okay, so do we need to amend, or do we have to move first, then amend?
You can remove, you can delete
Okay.
the fourth and fifth whereases.
All right, after we make a motion, we'll then move to amend.
Okay.
All right.
So when that happens, just for clarification, would our city attorney please bring that to our attention and give us the wording for the amendment? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else?
Nothing further.
Okay. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eric, I'm still struggling with this one, as you know. And, you know, when we passed this, obviously we made an agreement we would all come back and visit it at some point. But if, in fact, what you're telling us tonight is correct, and we assume that it is, why would we have reduced this $40 tab in the first place, and then now come back and say, well, now without it, we can't fund the street fund? It would have made no sense for us to reduce the tax at that time if we were going to have a negative impact on our budgeting out to 2044.
The council kind of wanted to mitigate the impact. So the council had saved up, you know, when the initiative was first challenged, you as a council decided not to expend money that we had saved up until that time, and we wouldn't spend the money until it was ruled on by the Supreme Court. So we knew that we weren't going to be fully funding that fund, but at that point in time we had enough because it wasn't projected to go negative, I think, until 2024. So this is back in 2020 or so, even before then. So you'd saved up these funds, and you knew that you could use those funds, and that we had projected that they would last approximately 5 years. And so thus the date of 2025 for review of that. So it was a conscious decision to use those saved funds during those one-time funds during that interim period and not impose the tax because you still have the funds sitting there.
I understand all of that, but assume we did not reduce the tax back then and kept it at the $40.
Right.
Where would we be today?
You would have a stable fund through 2044 likely. I haven't done the math, but it probably would have been stable
Or
through
to
2044.
44 or longer.
Right.
So it really wasn't a great decision for us to even tamper with that back when we did.
Well, I won't be the judge of that. but
Right.
All I can say
No, I'm
is,
just making
Yeah.
a statement here. So, again, I'm still struggling with it, and I'm not on board completely, and I need more information. And I thought, from my understanding, I thought we were going to have another study session on this so we could get more information, but here we are now at a decision-making point that we've got to thumbs up or thumbs down it. So I'm just somewhat perplexed and disappointed, but that's my own comment. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity.
Okay, and I didn't see any other hands. Okay. Okay. And before we move any further, and this is a point of clarification only, not for comments, will we keep it to that, please? Okay, Councilmember Worthington.
Yeah, I was just wanted to reflect upon my memory as well back in 2018, 19, and 2020 on this. And it was during that period of time that very much as Eric had outlined, with the passage of initiative, we felt it was not necessarily prudent to spend the money that was being collected until we knew the outcome of the court case, and put that in the bank, and we had this accumulation of funds. I agree that it probably wasn't to the benefit of the city's finances. My recollection is that some majority of council wanted to provide some sort of relief, essentially, to the citizens, and so reduce the amount for the period of time that we could fund the street program off of reserves. But I do clearly recall we knew we would have to revisit this in time for 2026, and that we knew this issue was not resolved in any case, but merely was a momentary pause. I think we had also had instituted a utility tax that helped fill the gap for a period of that time too, but that was also projected to run short in 2026 for the street needs. So just wanted to, I think, collaborate or support the general discussion, more of a factual recall and not at this point opinions.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit my name down, and I'll get to Councilmember McCluskey afterwards and whoever raises their hand. I just wanted to also, for clarification again, as to what happened, because it is important, and Councilmember Fleming, you bring up a good point. Why make a decision? There was quite a few factors in play, and a lot of it what Mr. Ferguson and Councilmember Worthington said, but I just want to expand on that a little bit, and that is, and the important part that Worthington said was the utility tax was never going to cover the entire future of maintenance, period. It was, and then we also knew that in order to provide, and I was a big proponent of that, to provide a break. If we're going to do this, let's provide a little break. We had this extra savings from what wasn't spent, and I said, let's provide a little break. And I mean, there's nothing wrong to providing a break for our citizens and until we actually need it, and later down the road, which is, we figured 5 years was enough, and so it was done. So to just give and take a little bit, and the 225 was done. We figured, for our best estimate. The reason it's coming earlier now, and again, as I spoke to the bonds, is that our biennium budget that we'll be passing later on this year is for 2025, 26. And so in order to really have a good budget that you don't have to do major amendments later on in 26, is to go ahead and have this passed so that as staff prepares the budget for us to review and vote on later on this year, it has that in mind. And that'll make it so much easier to prepare a budget that goes into 25, 26. So that's the reason it's coming before us now. So that was just a clarification. So I see Ms. McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to repeat what my Mayor and Councilmember Worthington has stated, but I do want to also reach out to Councilmember Fleming and his confusion and perplexity as to why we decreased it in the first place. That is sometimes a regret. You know, when you sit on the council, you look in the rearview mirror and you say, maybe that was the wrong move at that time, but it felt so good when I did it. So this is one of those evolutions. Yeah. And also in our staff meeting with Mr. Faison, I got an opportunity to ask him questions. Is there anywhere else in the budget that there's any fluff or we can squeeze in so that maybe we don't have to raise the funding for the TBD? He reflected and went over certain things with me and clarified that the budget doesn't really have any, it's pretty lean right now, especially with the debt repayment that we have that's coming up, that will reduce the general fund so significantly once we trigger that. And we also have and he reminded me of the additional public works staffing. That's all will be concurrently supported with this. And so I just wanted to share that on the dais to add to your comments here as well. And I also would like to hear from the other council members who may feel that we still need another study session on this, because when we have the discussion and our several council members are still confused and maybe need more detail or information, then I would like to give them the grace in order to do that so they can fully understand and have a more informed vote, whether it's yay or nay. Thank you.
Again, for clarification, Councilmember Boykin.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple of clarifying questions just because of the comments that I heard. And I just didn't have the benefit, obviously, of being on council, but certainly embracing the privilege now. As I think about the expectation of the 2026 impact, that's when this would go into effect. Is that correct?
Correct.
There was a comment about the councilmatic action tonight having an impact on budget schedule with a 2-year leeway essentially before it would take effect. Is there impact that is critical that would make it such that moving with a councilmatic action tonight unrecoverable when it comes to our budget considerations and scheduling?
I believe there is a position in the carry forwards that would be dependent on funding or projection that there will be funding to help support that position. But we're not finalizing the carry forwards tonight, so 2 weeks would not make a difference.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm really just trying to ensure that I provide really good support, not having had a chance to have been here when the conversation had originated and the expectation of what the impact would be. I can only really think about the impacts of the folks that I speak with today. And everybody is looking for different ways in which they can have impacts that are positive for their households. I don't know this to be a significant amount of money for any particular household, but I would suspect that it's an impact to some. And what I want to do is ensure that if there is opportunity to be confident that I get this right for the best intention of our city, I want to be sure that I'm not challenging a schedule of any sort because there were people who really invested in this particular conversation prior to me having an opportunity to contribute. So I hope that makes sense to my council members. I just want to make sure I'm being true to the residents in University Place and make sure I get this right for them as well.
Okay. Councilmember Grassi?
Thank you, Mayor. I have two clarifying questions. I just wanted to concur with my colleagues that I was under the understanding that we were having one more study session regarding this, just to make sure that we've crossed every T, dotted every I. I know that the staff has done a great job, and there are people way more competent than myself that have worked really hard on this. And I wanted to clarify, my last notes indicated we were looking at about a shortfall with this of about roughly $750,000 per year that we were looking to make up some way. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. I think
That would be the gap that we're trying to.
don't hold me to it, but I believe that is the amount. That, of course, grows over time. So
That's
as
our
you do
starting
projection,
baseline.
That's the starting point.
So when we're looking for any other creative solutions, any other ways to mitigate this, to lessen the impact for citizens, I too echo the sentiment of being very sensitive to any dollar amount increase of any kind. But that when we're looking for that gap, that makeup, that's the target amount. Am I correct? And if we were trying to look for another solution.
Yes, and I think it's important for you to understand that, when we do the budgets and we have these various funds, the street fund, the public safety fund, and the general fund are technically all one legal fund. So the money in those funds legally is interchangeable, except for TBD, which has to be used for street maintenance, right? Okay. But there are portions of the street fund that are funded essentially with general fund dollars. So as you look forward, the general fund looks healthy. If you did this, the street fund would look healthy. The public safety fund, voters voted for money of that, but it's not going to look healthy in about 12 years or somewhere thereabout. So if you don't raise this fund and there's a gap in this fund and there's a gap in the public safety fund, then that all will impact the general fund, assuming there's no voter-approved increase down the road. So I guess what I'm trying to say is all these funds are interrelated to the extent that if there is a deficit and you do not have any other money, then you're going to rely on the general fund. So it's not just a matter of $750,000 a year growing over time for the street fund. You eventually will have a deficit also in the public safety fund. And the backstop for both of those is the general fund. So, we're trying to do these long-range planning things. Yes, there is some degree of speculation about what will interest rates be, what will inflation be, what will the cost of our staffing be, what happens if we get a way more expensive contract in public safety. All those things are interrelated. So I guess I would discourage you from just trying to solve $750 a year. I've shown you what happens if you delay the implementation. I've shown you a forecast that shows if you waited until 2040 or 2039 2029 to implement it right before the deficit starts, how you can't, even if you raise it to $40, you cannot balance out that fund through the end of the time period. So you asked me whether 2 weeks matters? No.
Okay.
Will 2 years matter? Maybe so. So just wanted to explain that all this is interrelated, and so, hopefully you think long term.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're
Nothing
going to
further.
move on to public comment. And, excuse me a second. And so at this point, we'll move on to public comment, and anyone in the public would like to speak to this item, please come forward. state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council, again. My name is Dennis Flan, 2623 Lemons Beach Road. When we talk about budgets and different things coming in together, I think homeowners and all of us are affected by so many things, and the utility tax is one major one here lately. With all the communication services everybody needs these days, that's really adding up. As far as the TBD, I would like to see it gradually increase. I've heard all the arguments about we are going to be shortfalling from here to there in the future, but it's a shock going from the 10 to 40, and it will affect a number of people. And it's a bad taste in one's mouth when Sound Transit is stamping all over us as taxpayers. They pretty much snowballed everybody with their conversations for their passing of their bill, and they're billions of dollars, if I'm not mistaken, in the hole right now. And who's going to pay for that, and how is that going to come out of our budgets? I know you guys, I appreciate everything you've done in the past trying to get money back from the state. They're thieves. They owe it to us. It should be coming back. But on this item, sales taxes from online sales has been helpful for University Place, if I'm not mistaken. Now, we have some talk about taxes on parcel delivery coming up. Now, is that something that University Place has thought about? Because these trucks, I see them coming down my street constantly, and they beat up our streets on a regular basis. And the parcels, as they come to their homes, each one, there's like a 25-cent or a 50-cent fee for that delivery. And I've heard this from a few places, that this is an idea that's being put forth. So that might be something that City and University Place could look at. There's no getting back the bus damage to our streets, which I would like to see limited, and I would like to see the people who ride the buses pay a greater share for what they do to our streets. And as far as the costs for new help, maybe we should slow down on our green belts. Maybe we need to put a little less green belt in when we're putting in our street lights and all the things that go along with it, till we can afford it, instead of coming to the taxpayers and saying, oh, we need money now. Please use a little more conservative attitude towards that in the future. I mean, green is nice, I appreciate it, but I would like to see that calm down just a little bit. Thank you.
And for those that may be online, City Clerk, is there anybody there?
Mayor, I see someone has joined the meeting. However, they haven't raised their hand.
Hey, nobody
So
online.
you may call
wanting to
out,
speak.
ask if anybody is interested to raise their hand.
Okay. Again, is there anybody present here that would like to, from the public? I don't see any, so we'll end the public comment portion and move on to council consideration. And call for a motion to adopt a resolution imposing an annual vehicle license fee of $40, establishing an effective date and providing for severability.
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution imposing an annual vehicle license fee of $40, establishing an effective date, and providing for severability.
Mayor Figueroa, I'll second that.
Our city clerk would like to have a word.
Yeah, I noticed early on in the discussion, and I was trying to do the football move. The council bill and the resolution do not align. The proper motion should be move to adopt a resolution of the City of University Place regarding vehicle license fees.
Okay.
We should have caught that. My apologies.
Will you write that and have the city clerk bring it to me so I can read it?
Yeah.
Exactly how it's supposed to be? Thank you.
Do I need to withdraw the motion then and start over?
Well, she's bringing that up here. Mr. Kaiser, would you advise me as to, does Mayor Pro Tem have to withdraw his motion? Thank you.
Was it in fact seconded?
First and
I'm trying to see if I got on the grenade
there's a
fast
motion
enough.
and second on it.
There's a second.
The ask would be to withdraw the motion and substitute a new motion.
So ask Mayor Pro Tem to fully withdraw the motion.
I withdraw the motion.
Withdraw my second.
Okay. So here is the motion.
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution of the City of University Place regarding vehicle license fees.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we got that correct. Thank you. And with that, I know there's been some comments already made, but we'd like to continue that, and we'll go with Councilmember Worthington.
Actually, yes, and Your Honor, I would like to propose an amendment where we drop the fourth and fifth whereas in the resolution as presented.
Okay, so let's have everybody go to the fourth and fifth, and the amendment is, you're making a motion to amend it to remove, right?
Correct.
And let's everybody take time before any second is occurring. Okay. I second. And with that, would like to go for debate as far as the amendment, and would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, I'll speak to the amendment. So, as was pointed out earlier in this evening's meeting, the fourth and fifth whereas were actually carryovers from a previous draft and don't really speak to the current issue and really represent, I think, what's called a Scribner's error. And so as such, they should come out of this, and this is one way to do that. That's the extent of what that motion is about. So,
any other comments? Councilmember Boykin.
Thank you, Mayor. My comment is simply, I've heard enough to be confident that if there is an opportunity to study this further, given that, number one, there is no...
Mr. Boykin, we're discussing the amendment only, not the motion. You may speak to the amendment, but not to the motion at this point.
I'm speaking to the amendment, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you for losing my train of thought.
You're welcome.
Why it's important for me to offer the comments in the way I did directly speaks to the amendment, in my view, based upon the expectation of striking information that was part of the resolution. As a resolution that I read, not again having privy of the previous experience that brought this forward, I believe this to have been accurate until I heard further discussion about this in fact was in conflict with what the real expectation was. So the reason why I'm making sure I share that point is that's the only reason that would have me moving in a specific direction about looking to obtain more information about this issue, period, before I would be most comfortable in voting one way or the other. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Councilmember Fleming, you had your hand up? Nope? Okay. I'll speak to it a little bit, and that is that this is not unusual in the line of city business to see amendments to whether it be the adoption, the motion, or anything else. This is not that is not new. It happens a lot more than we think. And thank you, Councilmember Worthington, for bringing it out. Actually, somebody else brought it out. I think it was Mayor Pro Tem Wood. And so thank you. But I think it was a necessary one. But it shouldn't stop moving forward just because of that. But that's my comments. Anybody else? None seen. We'll go ahead and take a vote. and we'll go for a roll call on that, on the amendment. And the amendment is to remove from the resolution, the draft resolution before us, items, the whereas, 1, 2, 3, fourth and fifth whereas from the resolution.
Councilmember Boykin.
Yes.
Councilmember Worthington.
Aye.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Aye.
Mayor Figueroa.
Yes.
The motion for the amendment.
Point of order.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Grassi.
Yes.
Thank you. All this means is we're just a normal council and administration, and things will happen, but we correct it, and that's the important thing. So with that, we'll go back to the main motion and continue discussion. And anyone else before I speak that would like to? Oh, Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate bringing this before council, and I want to also say I appreciate the work the staff has done, and certainly, Eric, for your clarifications you've done for us this evening. I still, in my heart of hearts, believe that we need a little more time. Granted, we're up against a deadline for budget, and I want to be respectful of that. But I do think we need to take another look at this before we finally pass it. So for that, and having said that, I'm going to offer up a motion to table this to a date certain, to give us that extra time to work out some finalities on it, and then bring it back to council. So with that said, Mr. Mayor, that is my motion, and if there's a second, great. If there's not, then so be it.
Mayor Figueroa, I'll second that.
I need an air conditioner, is that what you said?
You do not need an air conditioner. No, you need a date or a condition.
I would say, when do we start budget discussions, Eric?
The city manager's budget will be presented to you the first meeting in October.
I would say on or before, for a date set, but with the mayor and the city manager.
Presumably, you want to do it before the city manager submits his budget so that he can submit.
Fair enough.
Right. So
The second meeting in September?
let's do the first meeting in September, which would be, is the
You could
second
say
holiday?
You could say the first regular meeting of September 20th.
First regular meeting in September. I think that gives us more than enough time to work out or to examine or review. So, thank you.
So Councilmember Fleming, for the record, would you please restate your motion?
So the motion is to table this proposed action until the first regular meeting of September 2024, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Comments? Debate? Councilmember McCluskey?
No, thank you. I think that's a smart move because I see perplexities in at least 3 council members, so it makes me uncomfortable that there wasn't enough information or clarity or other concerns needs to be addressed. So being that we have the grace of time to do it and to get it on to the September meeting, I think that's prudent to do so because I will feel more comfortable if all council members are on board with this one than having 3 that are still perplexed as to why we have to raise the fee at this time. Thank you.
Nobody else? Okay. Councilmember Boykin?
Mayor, thank you. Just wanted to reiterate, it is extremely important to me to talk about that long-term impact that council members have seen, expected, and have encouraged staff to support us in that regard. So I really want to reiterate, want to make sure I get this right. So thank you so much for hearing some trepidation on my part. I greatly appreciate it. And looking forward to what, if in fact we move differently, that will reveal for us as a council. I really appreciate it.
I do have a comment, and so this is a technicality. I need to ask a question of our city attorney, and that is to table it for the specific time, would that be specifically just for the way it's being presented, or can it change to, because there were some other options, facing it in, and so forth? Is that, or does it have, is it tabled only for what's being presented?
So what is on the table right now is a motion to table at council consideration. So what would appear in your packet for that first regular meeting in September, if the motion to table were adopted, would be the has amended version of the resolution. Council already took action on the amendment. It has not taken final action on this. So it would be for action. There would not be, unless council wished for an intervening study session. Your next touch with this, assuming you adopted this motion, your next touch on this would be on that first regular meeting in September. You would have the same vote that you have tonight.
Okay, so a couple of things, if I should finish.
Please.
And so one is, I'd like to hear from this council whether a study session is something you would like, or you can do this on your own with your with advice from staff. I need to hear from you. And the other part is take another consideration other than just the $40. As you know, there are some other ones, and I'd like to hear a little bit more from council whether we go in that direction or not. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate that offer, and I think it's a wise one. I think if we had a combination of another study session and then allow council opportunities to do the one-on-ones with staff, I think that would really help bring closure to this. Number two is just a minor correction. Council, when this comes back before council, council can offer an amendment for whatever that
Further amendments.
right, whatever that other option may be. To clarify, so it's not up and down on the same motion,
Correct.
But the council does reserve that right. So thank you.
Yeah, we're trying.
On that, I'll comment just a little bit more, and that is that as we move to, and I will, once I hear from everybody about the study session, I do recommend that as well. And but as we move forward, and as far as what the Mr. Sugg and staff brings forward, would be, again, not just studying this, but the options that are available, so everybody can be clear and knowledgeable of those options, so they can better make the decision at the on consideration. Anyone else about the study session? Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I do support another study session on this. I think in this particular issue, it's complex enough that hearing other council members' thoughts on the subject is very beneficial. And then just to comment on Councilmember McCluskey's earlier comment, as good as this probably felt for the council at the time, it's at least twice as painful to look at reimposing. And I think we owe it to ourselves and to the city to make sure that we're looking at this as closely as possible to make sure we're doing the right thing. So thank you.
Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, I also am interested in having another study session if it helps the council get feel comfortable with this issue. There's some time available for it. I think that would be time well spent. So.
Okay, well, then you have the direction, and we'll move on. And
You haven't had a vote yet.
pardon me?
Haven't voted yet.
Yeah,
You
point of
you still have
order.
to vote on the motion to table.
Oh, excuse me. Because I thought once it was tabled, you didn't have to go back to the main.
There's been
motion.
a motion and a second. There has not been a vote on the motion to table.
Oh, excuse me. You're right. Thank you. I thought it was already done the way the conversation went. Excuse me. So we'll have a roll call on that last table. And just to be clear, is to table to a certain time, first meeting, council meeting in September.
Okay. Councilmember Boykin,
Yes.
Councilmember Worthington,
Aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming,
Aye.
Councilmember Grassi,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wood,
Aye.
Mayor Figueroa.
Aye. So with that, we'll move on to item number 9. And I'd like to keep everybody in mind that we're behind our time that we approved. and by significantly, actually. So if we can keep those that are very significant and permanent to our current business, will be appreciated, so we can maybe get back on track. And now we're at the city manager's report.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Two quick items. One is parking meters. Parking meters are on a truck. They're going to be delivered this week. Next Monday and Tuesday, they're going to be installed on Marketplace that we've talked about before. It's about 50-some meters, metering those locations. The go-live time is going to be Monday, July 22nd. So we want to get them installed, do some testing, et cetera. So you're going to hear more about that from us, and there'll be more information. Just a heads up, next Monday, Tuesday, they're going to be installed. And then the second item is we're just a few days away from July 4th, so we want to give you a quick fireworks update for you to hear from the chief. So Police Chief Pat Burke is here, and we won't make this very long because you've got a lot of fireworks information already in the mail and in our reports to you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to provide just a few updates and reminders as we approach the 4th.
I'm sorry, Chief, could you put that right to your mouth, please?
That better? All right. As you know, it is legal to discharge fireworks in University Place on July 4th between 9 a.m. and midnight. However, they must be handheld and ground-based devices which are non-aerial and non-explosive. Residents can visit the city's website for more details on that. Residents who wish to report a violation can visit fireworksreport.com. That link is also available on the city's website. During the reporting window last year, we saw that over 50% of the complaints that came in on July 4th between 8 p.m. and midnight. With that in mind, your public safety team will increase staffing on July 4th and 5th, specifically on the 4th between 8 p.m. and midnight during that high volume period. With that in mind, the 4th is still one of the busiest nights of the year for law enforcement, not only with fireworks complaints, but also 911 calls in general. So for our citizens, we ask that they be safe, mindful of their neighbors, and then patient with their first responders. If people do have questions before the 4th, a great way that they can reach out to us is by email at uppublicsafety@cityofup.com. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. We'll move on to council members. And we'll start with our right over here with Councilmember Grassi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep my comments brief, but just really wanted to take an opportunity to highlight as we get ready and gear up for our community events in the summer. Just really want to encourage our community. Lots of things happening, music on the square, teddy bear picnic, still looking for volunteers with Dance Theater Northwest and our movie in the park coming up. Our communications team is doing a great job at getting the message out there, but this is a great time to enjoy our community, meet our neighbors, and so I just want to encourage folks to participate. Also want to be very thankful for the time that we had at AWC. As a newly elected council member, it was an invaluable time to learn, to meet other jurisdiction leaders, and to gain knowledge for our city that I can better serve our community with. So with that, I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fleming.
Wow, I wonder if I can say it that fast. Let me see what I can do here. I do want to say I had likewise the opportunity to attend the Association of Washington Cities. I know oftentimes citizens wonder, what are you up to when you go to a conference, and are you really attending the conference? I want to say that the conference this year was amazing. It really was. The information that they provided to electeds I thought was truly outstanding, done well. Learned a lot about homeless solutions for cities. Hope to share some of those ideas with staff when we have the opportunity. Talked about some hot topics in law, the fentanyl crisis, how DEA is handling that within communities. Talked about taxes. One of the proposals or one of the issues that cities are facing is a significantly number of what they call out-of-state ghost owners who buy property, jack up the rent or prices, which is really making housing unaffordable. So while we're looking at affordable housing, a lot of the cities are now looking at taxation for out-of-state homeowners, something we should perhaps take a look at. And outside of that, I was really surprised to learn at a luncheon that we had a young lady here in UP that had been nominated for a scholarship, had no idea that was even happening until we saw it on a poster at a luncheon there. So I hope we can do a better job in the future of recognizing those young people that are nominated for those things, and that maybe we can still make it up to this young lady here at the council. Short of that, I think I summarized it as fast as I could, and thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of quick things. Also, I attended the AWC conference in Vancouver, Washington. A couple of quick highlights there. I was involved in learned quite a bit in how to develop, by experiencing, a vibrant business district, a tour through that area, and just seeing how they've grown that over the last few years. I've been there a couple of times, but now we're really seeing that flourish and spring forward. I also participated as a voting delegate in the business session at the end of the conference for the city, and worked on the policy statement for AWC that they amend every 4, 5, 6 years, whatever, and work towards that. And then the conference selected its next leadership team, and we retained Mayor Penner as the AWC board member for the district that University Place is in. 4th of July, I'm going to take the opportunity to ride along with our first responders, with our police team, I should say, and keeping that tradition up as something I've done for the last few years. Look forward to seeing our folks working and interacting with the citizens on the 4th. And yes, it is a very, very busy night, and it's not just fireworks. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Well, thank you, Mayor. So I was at AWC as well, and the areas I went to focused on grant funding strategies. I picked up quite a bit of new and interesting information, which I plan to share with city staff here in the near future, about ways to make the city more attractive when it comes to applying for grants. And so with that, I'll keep it short. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
All right, thank you. I as well attended the AWC with my fellow colleagues here. And on Friday, I decided to go to the 4-hour FEMA training for elected officials. Some of that was a recap of the 2015 U.S. Open and other trainings, but there was also some additional information and also refreshing my memory on certain things. So that was good. It was long, 4 hours with only like a 15-minute break. I also had the opportunity to go on a mobile tour with Councilmember Boykin to the I-5 bridge to Portland for the full replacement at $7 billion. They're going to build another bridge side by side with transit, rail, a better pedestrian experience for bikes and walkers, and sounds like they're intending to establish a toll by 2026 in order to further. They're almost fully funded, but the toll will help, and hopefully it's a temporary toll, but you know how that goes. Also had some mobile tour to some homeless encampments with Councilmember Fleming. Saw pallet homes and RV parking, and so that was all very interesting. And the pallet homes had about 20 homes in it, and with all their resources and amenities, which was pretty stark. That was about $750,000 to sustain that each year. So just the price tags on those as well. Had a breakout session with Councilmember Worthington on the sense of belonging. That was a very good feel-good session, and got to know Councilmember Worthington a little bit more.
Yep.
Also, the keynote speaker was about the art of safety and parking making a destination, but it has to be worth the effort if we're going to have pay parking there, or if it's going to be challenging because of reduced parking. Other interesting note is in this country, dogs are starting to outnumber children. Go figure. The furry friends are winning our hearts. And so, anyway, and also what's circling around, as we already know, is that The other generations that are coming up after me want an authentic experience and quality of life above all else, rather than putting their nose to the grindstone and working hard 12-hour days like we have experienced. I was also attended the PCRC meeting, and I would like to say that we came away with all of our requests. They were approved. The city of Lakewood and the city of Tacoma and a few other cities voted no on the awarding of the transportation funding dollars. They have, and Mayor, this may bring a little angst to you, but once again, it's the process that they don't like. And hopefully we don't have to revisit that, because you worked extremely hard. You spilt your blood trying to get it done and doing it. And 1 year we have it implemented, and voila. Here we go again. I don't think we're ever going to be satisfied. But I would like to announce that our Chambers Creek Roundabout for $800,000, got it. The 67th Phase 3 improvement for $1,972,907, got it. Fir-Crest Partnership for the 44th Street sidewalks for a tune of $2,578,050, got that one. And one of my favorites here is the Chambers Creek pedestrian and bike improvements for $297,500, and $500, and the Bridgeport overlay for $7,063,235. I didn't all add that up, but that is quite a bit of funding. We are about the second in place of getting funding listed, and another interesting side note is that during this vote, no one brought up the name of City of University Place in ink, saying that we get most of the funding. So that was kind of a first for me. So kudos to Mr. Eklund and his team for putting forth extremely wonderful grant requests, and that scores high, so that we glean a lot of the funding that comes out of the PSRC. So thank you for that. And I also have the opportunity of being part of the Unified Regional Support for Homelessness. That's just getting off the ground. I'm now part of the breakout committee that is going over and evaluating about 6 grant applications for $1 million to, and this is done through the county's ARPA funds, that will set up a organization similar to SHAPE in order to organize all the cities and counties to come and create a collaborative process, and maybe put a little more financial skin in the game, or opening up other avenues of support to end homelessness. And I believe that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Boykin.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I want to do is thank Chief Berg for his comments around the impending July 4th holiday. Also, I'm excited about what that means for our staff and how we prepared. It was not lost on me about how challenging that can be within the city of University Place. And I just want to make it a point to say thank you in advance for making sure that we'll be safe and we'll be mindful and we'll be helpful. Please utilize the ways in which we can help communicate any challenges that are outside of what's appropriate. There is an effort to call that out. If you can give me some help with that particular website that we should be reaching out or sharing with others, so that they can be mindful of anything that's inconsistent, I should say, with the appropriate activity around the 4th of July holiday. Any help? Fireworks. fireworksreport.com. Thank you so much. So I want to make sure that we're ready and we're excited and we're eager to have a very safe July 4th holiday. I want to make it unanimous about the opportunity to attend Associated Washington Cities conference. It was just simply fantastic. It's important to remind you that council had a goal in 2024. One of them was ensuring that we had our regional influence increased. I can tell you what people were saying among the 400 elected officials that were in Vancouver, recognizing that good, bad, or indifferent, our full council was there. That dedication meant something. People talked about that. What that means to me is that's one more way in helping demonstrate that our regional influence is a collective thing. And because we are dedicated to making sure we learn as much as we can, engage and start and leverage as many partnerships as we can, it was one more way for me to really be excited about what we get to do in terms of service to the city of University Place. The theme was livable, lovable cities. And the expectation was recognizing that these elected had a bond with their own people in their towns and cities, and the expectation of how it is that that can come across in ways in which collectively we can find out better ways forward. So in spite of the different ways that we learned together and had individual opportunities with different learning opportunities among council, I had a highlight that I'm going to always remember. I'm giddy about it. I got to be the flag bearer for the city of University Place. So during the parade of flags, it was really, really cool to swing our city flag and have a great time making sure that folks understood just how proud I am, and in my view, with 7 council members showing up, how we were proud of our city. The only other thing I want to make sure that I share with you, Mayor, is I got the opportunity to attend the Pierce Transit board meeting. It was a special meeting, and only to ensure that there was a composition around a review of that governing body for Pierce Transit. We're going to have a change in our selection of a seat. We still hold seat number 8, but there's going to be an addition in terms of who is represented in that seat. I'll just give a quick reminder that we've had in the past that seat's been represented by the City of University Place and the City of Fircrest. It will be represented by the City of University Place, Fircrest, as well as Gig Harbor. And I'll give a more in-depth, detailed report at our next opportunity to convene. Thank you, Mayor, and that concludes my report.
Very nice reports. Thank you all. Try to keep it short here. Well, I have to apologize first because I've been kind of neglecting my Robert Rules of Orders as a mayor, because it is in our council policy to follow the Robert Rules of Order. And I used to be sharp on that, but I kind of slid, and so I'm picking up the manuals. I got them here tonight, just make sure I highlighted things. I talked to the city attorney about certain things, and I promise that as you'll see some changes in how I operate the meeting, because that's what you asked. And so I'm going to try to abide by that. But if you see certain things and you don't recognize that, you will know what I'll mention this is Robert Rules of Order, so you may recognize it. I did attend 2 Robert Rules of Order 1 and 2, which is not a complete set of all the things at the AWC. And I did drag Councilmember Boykin. I had to break his arm to get him to go there. But thank you. I really appreciate it, because you might recognize some of the things as I move along. And I did ask our city manager, Sugg, to supply a parliamentary procedure pamphlet that they have to the council as well. And I do encourage you to read that and at least get familiar, because you'll see me enact some of those things as we move along. And they'll be kind of strange, because we've been kind of a little not on par with all that. So that's my biggest take from the AWC. And so with that, I'd like to move on to our study session. And the portion of our agenda is the study session. And so we'll start with a legislative proposal, Harvest Ridge. Before we do, please keep in mind that that's supposed to start at the 7:20. So you can see 40 minutes have gone by. I'd like to keep in mind that this is one that we've actually had a placeholder for another 2 study sessions just in case we needed it. So we can maybe make some introductions here, keep it maybe a little bit shorter, hopefully, with the understanding that we would still go to another study session. Okay. And I would appreciate that, mainly because there is another item that is super important and does have a priority, and that is the law enforcement interlocal agreement that we need to really do a due diligence of debate and study sessions and give a direction to the staff. And I'd like to really make sure that that doesn't get cut off at the knees and passed down when over this one here. So let's see how we can go in the next 15 minutes and go from there. Okay, Mr. Eklund?
I'm just the
Facilitator.
slide changer.
The slide changer.
Oh, well.
They're very expensive.
Well, you're more than
excuse
just
me.
that.
Let me see. There goes the rules. Let me Councilmember McCluskey and Councilmember Fleming, who did the legislative proposal, will be given the floor to go ahead and start the conversation as to what their take was on bringing it forward.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and my fellow co-signer, Councilmember Fleming. And I have been working on this legislative proposal. When we first put it together, it has kind of morphed a little bit with more, deeper dives into the data, and with our city attorney, Matt Kaiser, and Mr. Jack Eklund, and also partnership with our county council member, Ryan Mello, and some other subject matter experts. So the intent of an outcome in leaning towards that we're going to have another study session is the city to encourage a stronger partnership between Harvest Ridge and the Pierce County Sewer Authority to maintain the integrity of the slope, and the County Council and the UP City Council to create a pathway forward that will not have private citizens solely accountable for the stability of a public infrastructure into perpetuity. Citizens do not have the resources or the expertise. As we look through some of the back data, there's been several failures, one as early as in 2004, where the bioswale hasn't been maintained. There's been channel erosion and slope failure underneath the liner. So trigger forward to 2022, and we have almost the same scenario popping up. And part of that is on the ownerships of the HOA, but it's also on the ownerships of whoever goes out there and does the annual review of the slope integrity and how the stormwater pond is functioning. Because let's go to the first slide so we can get overview. So if you see the first slide here, and we have Harvest Ridge pointed out here, you could see the amount of waterways that filter into this, and just by looking at it, it's an extensive stormwater pond. And to have that fail, irregardless if it didn't have a public sewer pipe going through it, would be catastrophic to the environmental salmon habitat that is there. But it has a sewer pipe that takes in, I believe, all of the county sewer, or most of it. I think it's all of it.
At least all of the part of the county that goes to the West Side Sewer District.
Yeah.
Or the, sorry, that's
Right.
dates myself,
So
so
they're-
not called that anymore, but
Yeah.
to our plant.
But there's a lot. There's a lot. And so if that was to ever fail, that would be certainly a health and a biohazard there, which prompted the initial legislative proposal from Councilmember Fleming and myself. We need to do our due diligence and get the partnerships with the Pierce County Council, the Pierce County Sewer, the City of University Place, and Harvest Ridge working together for the assurity that is maintained. Can we move to the next slide? This is a condition where Mr. Eklund gave us a phone call and said, we have an emergency situation. And it evolved over time, and a lot of things dovetailed into it. The HOA Secretary, Mr. Steve Zelt, has been before our dais and spoke to us about it. He met with us each individually, and he also has a timeline of what he discovered, and it's all in the packet that you can read for the next study session. And in addition to that, they did hire a city attorney, an attorney that had municipal experience. She's no longer with them, so they do not have an attorney at this time. And they do not intend to. They are hoping that things can work itself out maybe in years to come. But right now, they do know that they are responsible for maintaining the stormwater pond and also reconstructing the bioswale, as we were briefed before. But that's today. So things can evolve and change. So can you change the slide? So that is also the failure, and the reasons why it failed is because of the trees, and we're rooting underneath the membrane that's there, and created water erosion to go underneath. But what is also currently happening is that the membrane is starting to deteriorate. It's getting old. You know, it's probably over 20 years old, so it probably all needs to be, instead of patched and to be fully replaced at some point in time. Can we turn to the next one? See if I'm tracking with you.
I think I got ahead of you, yeah.
Am I? I'm
No, I got ahead of you. I think this one or the one before it.
Okay.
I think it's this one.
That one.
Yep.
So that's the extensive trees that have grown out. And on the other side is what it looks like today after the city went in and did their emergency order to ensure that our next significant storm that was approaching in the October and the winter wet season wouldn't have a catastrophic event with the erosion and further protecting the pipeline and the salmon habitat and ensuring that the stormwater functioned properly. And this is, so this is a significant difference to where it was. My concern is, how did it ever get to here? My understanding and my assumption, I'll say, we were to have, not us, Pierce County Sewer, were to have annual inspections to make sure that the slope was secured and the stormwater was functioning, as well as in partnership with the City of University Place. That's why when it was, I think a couple years before that, there was maybe a concern, but then it became a more catastrophic event because we had significant rainfalls, and the water just gushes out. There's significant water flow during a wet season in there. That is why the stormwater retention pond looks so large. And it overflows, and the smaller ones up the stream in a significant rainfall, the smaller stormwater ponds eventually overflow, and they all flow into this one as well. That's why this is of a significant importance, that it is functioning properly, and once again, the sewer pipe is maintained, its integrity. and it's abutting a salmon-bearing creek as well. So the next slide. I wanted Mr. Eklund to put this in so you could see the design, the redesign concept of this, and maybe you can explain a little bit more than I can about the reconstruction of it.
Sure. Yeah. So, so basically, it was restored back to its original configuration of the slopes. One thing to point out here: this line here that shows the S, that's the sewer line where it runs. Generally, up in the area where the failure was, it's on top of the slope. It's on top of the slope. However, it gets closer to the entryway. It is more in the slope itself. This was the area that was fully treed, and where Councilmember McCluskey mentioned the trees had allowed all the water from this big area to go underneath the liner and washed out the area in this location. The work was done. It restored the grades to the original configuration, and then because the work had to be done in an emergency fashion, we were not able to reestablish the bioswale. This area here was originally designed for the water quality treatment of all the water that comes in. At the time, due to the time of year, we had to just line it with that rock line channel that was shown in the picture. And so this was something that was discussed with the HOA, and then they are required to come in and kind of these little, like little chevron type of things. Those are rock check dams or rock dams that slow down the water. Those will still be there, but then what they'll be required to do is to pull back the rock in between and plant some bioswale grasses so that the water can be filtered to meet the standards of ecology. But that's the general gist of what this is showing.
Right. Thank you. Okay. So let's move on to the next slide as to what it looks like today. So this is a current picture of the Harvest Ridge storm pond. I thought there was a different photo than this. But anyway.
One of the things on here I'd like to, where Councilmember McCluskey was talking about the new versus the old and the worn. So you can see here where it's a little bit lighter colored liner, which is here and then down to the edge. And so it's a little bit lighter colored to the left-hand side of the bottom. That is the new liner section that was put in, and is essentially this location is a permanent repair of the liner. The darker stuff that looks a little splotchy has some patches in it, and that's the area that Councilmember McCluskey was referring to as the
Right.
aging part.
Yeah, thank you. So in the PowerPoint on my screen, I could get a lot more detail into the bioswale and into the storm pond. And it is now currently growing. I see little trees again. And there is some sort of foliage of some sort growing inside the bioswale. And of course, it needs to have the right type of plantings in there so that it could hold the rocks and the soil intact. And so for it to be allowed, in my opinion, we need to look at the right types of plants to put in there that will create a foothold to grab the soil and to keep it in place. So to me, the sooner that happens, the better, since we're coming into another storm season. And you put in hundreds of thousands of dollars in reconstruction here that the Harvest Ridge residents have paid for. And can you go to the next slide? So just to say that nature doesn't just stand still. It continues to grow and evolve. And if we don't keep check on it, it will evolve into what happened a couple years ago or in 2004. This drawing here is the slope elevation, and the circle in it is where the sewer pipe is located. To give you an idea, that there's 7.5 feet from the top elevation of it on the top surface. And when it starts to slope down, there's about 10 feet of erosion. When this eroded initially, going out, there was like a little belly pocket. The integrity of the sewer pipe wasn't impacted, but it could have been when the erosion was coming through. So there was about 4 feet of erosion that occurred. So you had 6 feet of buffer still there to hold it in place so far. But if it wasn't caught in time and we didn't do the emergency action, then it could have been a significant event that took place, but it did not. So that kind of gives you things that are up to date in a nutshell. What's currently happening now is that Pierce County Sewer is doing an evaluation of the slope and status of the current situation, and hopefully we'll get a feedback and report on that. Mr. Eklund had reported that back to me today, and maybe a possibility of a small bulge that needs to be rectified. We have to verify that, but it doesn't appear to be very significant. Maybe where the membrane needs to be shored up a little bit and replaced. And also Harvest Ridge is still on, needs to repair the bioswale. And they have a strong deadline for that. So once that happens, we get a report back, the bioswale is intact and in place, then we can figure out if we have a letter of intent to the Pierce County Council, work with our council member Ryan Mello to see if there is a pathway forward for the administrator to look into it, give a report, come back to us and see if it is valid and fiduciarily correct to ensure the safety of the pipe, and also working in partnership with the public infrastructure, with our private citizens, to make sure the stormwater pond maintains its function. And the pipe continues to flow what it needs to flow into our sewer treatment plant. And with that, I'm going to just transition it over to Councilmember Fleming to see if he has any additional feedback or data. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. You very eloquently have laid out the whole scenario of where we were and where we are for this discussion as we go forward. You know, my primary concern, as you pointed out, this crosses 2 jurisdictions, involves the citizens of University Place. And I've shared this with our city attorney. You know, my primary concern here with this project is, number one, the purpose of government is to serve its people, and looking for ways in which we can work collaboratively with the residents of Harvest Ridge, and then find that workable win-win solution that gets the county involved as well as University Place. So at the end of the day, doing nothing is not an option, because as you pointed out, if that fails, then we've got a catastrophic environmental issue on our hands, and then we will have that, for the most part, on our own to clean up and then figure out in the aftermath who owns what. So I haven't heard any pushback from Harvest Ridge in terms of what they won't do. I've heard a lot of what they were willing to do, and what they're most willing to do is to work with the city to find a solution to this situation. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, and then hopefully we can find that pathway forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to discussion and so forth with the rest of the council members, staff, Jack, Matt, any additional information that you would like to add for our discussion before we start going to discussion?
One point of clarification on the responsibilities of like annual inspections. So per the existing, there's an existing agreement, it's basically an easement agreement between the county and the Harvest Ridge. There is no formal requirement by the county to do any inspection. So that could be a request, is to ask the county to be more proactive from that. But there's not a legal obligation for the county to do an annual inspection. From the city's perspective, our NPDS permit does now, as of last year, is when the requirement kicked in. We do have an obligation to do an annual inspection of the facility, of the storm drainage facility itself. But I just wanted to clarify. So prior to last year, there wasn't at least an obligation from that standpoint, but now our NPDS does require us to do it. And then I guess just from geotechnical, the slope has been, the rebuilding of the slope and the design has been evaluated by a geotechnical engineer. And their opinion is, as long as everything is maintained, that there's not an inherent risk of failure, but it is contingent on maintenance.
Mr. Kaiser?
I have lots, but I'm also sensitive to your time. One thing I think it's important to note, as Jack indicated on his final point, with the slope being relatively stable, subject to maintenance obligations, the one issue that there are many issues I see, but the one I'll focus on right now is obviously the question of who is responsible for maintenance. You've seen in the packet, and I don't want to belabor the point tonight, recognizing that there are time constraints on here. All documents do point to the responsibility of the slope being the responsibility of Harvest Ridge HOA. And we've identified, at least through our reading of the Pierce County Code, it's obviously up to them for them to interpret, analyze, and whatnot, at least the parameters, the overlay by which they would take on the responsibility and ownership of a private storm facility. And it doesn't take much reading in there to indicate that they have some pretty firm opinions that's codified within the Pierce County Code on that matter, with a laundry list of requirements, together with who is the decision maker, the finality, and so forth. Obviously, if we had more time, I'd go through that. I don't want to go through that tonight, recognizing you got conflict. The final point I will leave you with, recognizing the mayor had said we're going to have some additional study sessions. I had an email across my desk this afternoon, actually, from our insurance pool. They weren't talking about Harvest Ridge or anything like that, but I knew we had this discussion, and they had their monthly bulletin in there. And there's an article in there that starts off with, "When good intentions go awry." And I'll just read the opening paragraph, just so you kind of get a sense, at least the lens here, to orient this through. "We have all heard the saying, 'No good deed goes unpunished.' A quote from Oscar Wilde that rings true when a well-known meaning act backfires. This adage is especially relevant when cities get involved with issues on private property. There are good reasons why municipalities need to tread carefully in such situations." End paragraph, and then it goes on to cautionary tales and the like. So I saw this cross my inbox about 2, 3 o'clock this afternoon, knowing we had the meeting tonight. They don't talk storm ponds, they talk other plumbing-related issues. But I think that's one of the things that council should bear in mind as we go through further study sessions and have this discussion. You do have the possibility where good intentions are likely to go awry on this. So with that, I'll conclude my initial remarks for the time being, recognizing you got a couple other items on the agenda.
Okay. Let's give it a few more minutes. What I'm thinking, council, so you kind of know how I'm going to put this on track, is I did talk to Mr. Brisky, our planning director, and about his last item on the study session. And we do, that's flexible, and he's willing to forego that, and we'll vote on that. But as a last item, will give us an extra half an hour. But we have about 10 minutes here or so before we need to really get to the law enforcement. So it's just to kind of give you an idea where we're at, knowing that we have another study session. So let's go ahead and entertain some comments, questions. Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And what I'm going to do is, instead of making a whole bunch of comments, I'm just going to ask questions that I don't expect the answer to now, but if you could write these down for our next study session, I'd appreciate it so that we can get these answers. And these just came to mind during Councilmember McCluskey's presentation. So first, I would say there are multiple players here You have the HOA, you have the county, you have Pierce County Sewer, and of course you have the city. I'd like to see delineated currently what is the role each entity plays in this whole, not just the storm pond, but also in maintenance of the sewer pipe and stuff like that. Second, if there's any way we can get a quantifiable assessment of risk. Specific, a quantifiable assessment of risk, or any other way we can somehow just measure the risk that goes with the sewer pipe, because honestly, that's my primary concern. That's where my concern is. It's a key piece of public infrastructure that is largely being supported and maintained through an HOA. And I get it. If the slope is maintained, nothing bad should theoretically happen. But I would be curious, if I get an assessment of risk. This is just one that popped up. What is the anticipated life of the liner, both old and new, that they have in the pond right now? And then this is probably a city attorney type question, what kind of precedents would we be setting depending on the level of involvement we go into this with this? Because this is not the only stormwater pond in the city that's privately managed. And so that's a key consideration for me. And those are the ones that came to mind during the discussion. I'm sure I'll have more later, but I yield. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and make some comments now, and it's mostly an awareness, and that is, if you read the materials, you'll see that the only person that can make a decision on this is, I believe, you can correct me, staff, is the director. Let's see here, the director of Public Works for the county, and is that correct?
That's how I'm reading the Pierce County Code, absent an amendment to their code.
Correct. So they're the only ones that can make that. The HOA cannot go into a separate brainstorming session to see what can happen. Really, it needs to be addressed with that person, and because who's as the ultimate authority. And so that's number one. Number two is being involved with real estate for most of my life. I can tell you, and I was an appraiser for 12 years out of that career. And I can tell you right now, when it comes to deeds, when it comes to titles, when it comes to HOA covenants and CCNRs, they're pretty set. It's like the law, and the law actually, state law actually protects those, and there's a reason for it. To think that even if we could do something to help them out, that changes what there was, because in the CCRs and also on the deed and the titles, it's very, very specific who's in charge of maintaining that, who was supposed to be doing any maintenance and everything else. To change that, you would have to do a huge amount of title, and you got another process there with the title companies, and I can just on and on, but I can tell you it would set a precedent with the court. This is not just us and this particular HOA, but it would set a precedent anywhere in the state, which I think that we would lose on that. I can tell you I've been a court witness, expert witness on this many times, and this is when you're dealing with this kind of an HOA and their CCNRs and the state law, and then you, on top of that, you have a county code that says strictly that planning director has the last word. You would have to change, the council would have to change those rules. They would have to change that code. And you couldn't have just a council president or the executive saying, oh, let's help them out and change this. That's not how it works. They would have to change the code. So I don't see how this would work any way, shape, or form. But certainly, if this council thinks that there's more things that can be dug out, I don't know. The documents are in here very, very clear, step by step, and so. But if you wish, I think that my suggestion is to have a council member that's for and a council member that's against, and a neutral council member that doesn't really, hasn't decided form a committee, work with staff to directly work with the county public works director to see any options, and if any were available, the timing of that, because I can tell you right now, it's a code change, and that's not a 3-month, 6-month deal. That's over a year to 2 year kind of a deal. So, and that's if they even, I would say that their attorneys are going to say, we're not going to mess with the state and CCR's legislative protection over that. And it's very strict. You would unwrap a lot of different things in this. I don't think anybody knowledgeable in this area would want to unwrap it. So that's my remarks. And so anybody else, and we may have maybe 5 more minutes. And then what I'd like to do, if we can't come up with any direction, is to go to another study session. So, Councilmember Grassi.
Thank you, Mayor. My question for Councilmember McCluskey or Fleming, can you elaborate on the letter of intent portion that you were, the draft of that, the language of that? Would you mind?
Yes,
for my clarity?
I did not draft the letter of intent.
I'm sorry?
I did not draft the letter of intent.
No, but the proposed action of the letter of intent?
Well, for the city to encourage a stronger partnership between Harvest Ridge and the Pierce County Sewer Authority to maintain the integrity of the slope, and the County Council and UP Council to create a pathway forward that will not have a private citizen solely accountable for the stability of a public infrastructure, the sewer pipe, into perpetuity.
So I'm just clarifying that is our first action step here.
That was the intent, right?
Okay.
It wasn't for the whole stormwater pond situation, but the evolution of it is that putting it, since there is the sewer pipe, the public infrastructure in the slope of that, and it was almost compromised with significant storm events and the HOA not taking care of the bioswale. And now we have a liner that needs to be replaced, and also that protects that slope where the sewer pipe is. And so today, the Pierce County Sewer went out there to do an evaluation of that, to see where it's at today, and to give an assurity that there's not going to be any slippage of who takes care of what, and that the Pierce County Sewer and probably the City of University Place will help do their inspections and to ensure that maintains the function that it was intended to when it was designed.
Okay. I think it's just helpful clarity for me and for those listening online, exactly what we're circling back to the moment as when we talk about precedent. And as much as I appreciate our attorney's timely email that came from our insurance provider, I do echo the sentiment that we work as hard as we can and get as many yeses as we can until we get a no, and don't work from the fear aspect of what could happen. So I appreciate your work on this, and Councilmember Fleming, and look forward to another study session. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Wood, for those questions. I had a couple of the same, so I'll look forward to that in a second study session. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to run out of time, and I'm going to have to really keep track of this.
Mayor,
No, we really are at time. And
but there needs to be a clarification. It's materials.
If you can keep it down to 1 minute.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Less than that.
Okay.
Thank you. To keep in mind that there is an easement that Pierce County Sewer owns, and that's where the sewer pipe is. So certain feet above it, HOA, 20 feet, Pierce County Sewer, where the sewer pipe goes through, and then the rest of the slope belongs to the HOA. So that's where the ownership is. Thank
30
you.
feet.
30.
30, yeah.
Okay, correction, 30. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll have another study session lined up, and we're done. So I have to move on.
It's really important, though, is the only thing I do have to stress this, because it's timely and so far I apologize. But,
okay.
I do want to make sure that we don't confuse what we're talking about here with what the homeowner association has to do and needs to do to restore the bioswale. That is something that is not, and I think it needs to be clear to the HOA too, that that is not something that can be pushed back. Department of Ecology is very concerned of why we are not assessing penalties to the homeowner association. And if we delay things, that means Ecology assesses penalties to us. And so, obviously, whatever works with the discussion that Councilmember McCluskey is talking about, that's independent of HOA taking care of their responsibility. And that message needs to be clear, because there's a big risk of us violating our permit with Ecology if that doesn't move forward.
Well, just to be clear, and I hate to do this, but I don't believe that you assessing, doing your duties and abiding by the other laws prohibit you, this study session, or another study session prohibits you from assessing those fees.
Correct. I just want to make sure that understanding is clear.
I just want to make sure this council is not prolonging that.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. We'll do another study session as soon as we can, and go from there. With that, before we move on to the next study session, I'd like to make a motion to remove the comprehensive plan studies update for another study session. And may I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. I guess there's a debate here, comments before I move on to a vote. Anybody want to comment? None? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. We'll move on to item number 11, law enforcement interlocal agreement. And I think we have, I don't have a name for that. Let's see. Yes, well, I do. Jennifer Hales, our public safety administrator, and Matt Kaser.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So before you tonight is your team who have been working hard for over the past year on bringing forward an agreement to council with a new fixed term. That includes the new levy-approved officers from April of last year. Does everyone have this packet in front of them? Okay, very good. So I'm just going to go over the high points. I'll let Eric talk about the financials, and then we'll open for any questions that you might have. As you know, the city has a 28-year relationship with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department to provide police services. This new agreement goes through 2030 with an auto renewal. Same termination clause as the previous 18 months. The city will receive 4 new officers this year with you might remember, the proposed $200,000 recruiting investment, $100,000 in 2024 to receive 4 in November, and $100,000 to receive 4 more in 2025.
Ms. Hale, before you go to the next slide, how would you like to handle this? Questions at each slide or after you're done?
I think after we're done.
After you're done.
Yeah.
And before we move on to that, I saw a hand kind of go up. Did you have a question now?
Later.
Later. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. The contract cost model is the same as it was previous. So we have a flat rate lump sum that includes all of a fully loaded officer versus a line item. Our previous contract had a minimum maximum yearly escalator. So if you remember, it was 3 to 6% every year. Yeah. Now we have a CPIU, June to June CPIU. Future costs in this contract are the extraordinary costs that the Sheriff's Department would incur in the Washington State Workers' Compensation Fund and salary and benefit increases. The city would pay for the new vehicles. It would be a one-time cost only for the new additional levy officers. So those new vehicles will come to our people, and the replacement vehicles are built into the fully loaded officer. Okay, Eric.
As it relates to the cost, just want to let you know that the one-time cost that Jennifer might have referenced is, as we add these officers, there are one-time costs for their training period, for their car, their equipment, and all those sorts of things. So for the first 4 officers, that's $1.5 million, and then next year it's about 1.6, because the cost of an officer goes up next year. We don't fully know exactly what those costs will be. We'll know those after the CPI number this June is released, and we'll know what the inflationary adjustment will be. There are also the ongoing costs, which is similar in nature. So for January through October, you have our current contract officers, and then you add the officers, the 4 officers, and so there's a small portion of this year where you're paying the addition for the ongoing costs for those officers. The next year numbers, 25 and 26, include assumptions related to the inflationary adjustment again. In our forecast, we assume 5% increase for next year and 6% for 2026. We're hoping that that won't be the case and we'll be able to save a little money, but that's what we have projected. And these are in the forecast numbers that you have seen previously. So no changes there. And so here we wanted to provide you with an apples-to-apples comparison of the costs. So this is not adding any new officers, just showing you what it would look like in 2024 and 2025, if you had kept the same number of officers, but we had the new contract cost in place. So you can see it's a relatively minor cost increase for 2024, and then for 2025, it's, again, reflecting the 5% estimated increase for that year.
I think the next slide is really just the next steps. So I don't know if we want to open to questions before we move on to that. Matt? Okay, yeah.
That was your presentation.
That
For
was
such a complex contract. Well, that's fine, because we all read this contract in detail. We got questions for you. So this is a good time to go deep into the weeds with whatever you like. So I'm entertaining hands. So Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jennifer, thank you. I love it when you can simplify something that's really complex. So
Me too.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to make sure, as we go into this contract, I just want to state that, number one, I fully support our officers, and I want to make sure they got everything they need to do the job and keep the community safe. So I've got a couple of just what I call my dumb questions, and I'll just throw them out there on that. When on that one slide where it talks about the $100,000 in 2024 the city's going to receive for 4 officers, that doesn't cover the expense of even 1 officer. So what does the $100,000 do for us?
The $100,000 was a recruiting incentive that the city offered to the county to receive those officers. So as you know, the county is in a staffing crisis, as many of the other law enforcement agencies in our region. And so in order for us to have a timely delivery of those levy-approved officers, we wanted to invest in the recruiting and in the hiring process for the sheriff's office. So that is over and above the cost of an officer. So that's an investment into that recruiting.
Okay, so that's money we're paying to the county for that. Okay, second question is over on the next couple of slides where it talks about one-time costs, 1.5 million and change. Comes out to roughly $376,000 and change per officer. what are we getting for that, and what does the officer get for that?
So in your packet, you have the line item costs for each officer, as well as the additional costs for, administrative aid, et cetera, et cetera. So it depends on what exactly you're looking at, and you're talking about for the one time.
I'm looking at the one-time cost
Right.
for the contract, showing 1.5 million in change for the four officers in 2024.
I think it's the one time is all the upfront costs we were talking about in terms of the officers are trained for a 10-month period. So basically, we're paying their salary for 10 months while they're in training. It includes the cost of a police car, the cost of all their gear, all those sorts of things. So it's, as Jennifer mentioned up front, there's the all-in cost of an officer. We're not doing line item, but within that all-in cost, there are a bunch of line items that they just don't. It's not written in the contract as each of these little items. It's just a bulk amount.
All right, so everything from uniforms to guns, all the South Sound dispatch training, all of, everything that is loaded into an officer, that if the city were to hire someone and train them to be fully street ready,
Right.
all of those costs are what's wrapped. And previous to this contract, we paid what's called a ramp up. So we would pay 10 months for an officer before that officer was actually working in University Place to cover those costs. This is a one lump. We would pay the county for all these officers at one time to
Okay.
get those officers in November of this year, and again another 4 in next year.
Just like prepping a soldier and equipping them.
Yep.
So I get that. Okay.
But it's even better for us because we get experienced officers. So these officers that are in training are going to the Pierce County Sheriff's Office, and in exchange, we're getting an experienced officer to come here.
Yes.
I like that even
competes
better.
To come. Yes.
Nothing against, what do they call them, rookies, chief? But I like the experienced ones.
Yep. They'll get there.
Yeah. We all do with time. So thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I have you named down. Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you. That's all right. So thank you. First off, for the team who put this together, Steve and the rest, thank you very much. It's great to see this. I think it's a big step forward for us. I think it approaches fairness when I look at it in the big picture view. It is, I think, a better agreement for both sides without a 3% floor on absolutely saying you'll have at least a 3% increase each year without having a corresponding ceiling as one example. But regardless, this takes a more, I believe, a fairer approach. And it has some other benefits to us as well. Among other things, it's in one cohesive document, not 16, paced together throughout the years. So that's helpful. But it also is very thoughtful and has contemplated some things that I think are good. Having said that, there are some details that I'd like to go through, and I don't necessarily, so from what I can tell, I have maybe 5 or 6 quick questions and then potentially one correction. So, and let's start those questions on page 2, item C, which talks about supervisor liaison. It talks about the sheriff will essentially will provide a sergeant or lieutenant as chief. No problem. That's what we have done. The other thing we have done that is not, I did not see stipulated here, but I do know are in other county and municipal agreements, local agreements here currently active, is the provision for the chief executive officer, which this person is on the police side for us, for the local jurisdiction to have some, not so much ability to pick, but just to be consulted in the process. I don't see a reference to the city, more specifically the city manager being consulted. Now, that has been the habit, if I recall right. And maybe that's good enough, but I don't want to just let it slip by with having some opportunity to talk about that.
It's there. It's there, it's buried, it's actually in the second paragraph of 2C. There's a cross-reference in there to a Guild MOU dated March 27th, 2018. That MOU contains the reference of which you speak.
Okay. And so what I'm hearing from you is, yes, it's there, and it'll be similar at least to what we've historically had.
Right.
That's good. That's good enough from my perspective. Thank you. Then let's go to page 6, item C, which is the calculation of South Sound 911 services. And it says South Sound 911 will create a bill and we will pay it. Is there any relationship to their billing that relates to the sales tax rate that the citizens of this county created? Or is that just goes directly to them? So this is solely our cost and is a public safety cost. We don't have a reciprocal revenue fund that comes in to backfill that expense. Is that what I'm?
Yes, this is a pass-through.
Okay. All right. Help me get an understanding on that same page of item H, which is a credit for unincorporated response. I don't need a long explanation, just
Okay.
briefly.
We no longer have that unincorporated part of the county, and that has been a recent transfer. As you know, the PC 25 Manitou section has been annexed by the city of Tacoma,
Okay.
and that just recently.
So this still anticipated that and doesn't reflect that change. Okay. There may be, I might envision there might be some other opportunity or need, but I don't know what that would be, but it could happen, I'm guessing. I'll get back to that question a little bit more in the future. Let's go to page 9, section 7, labor negotiations. In that, it seems to say that the city of UP, along with any other contract cities, will have, I wouldn't say a seat at the table so much as a seat with the team of labor negotiations. Do I have that right?
Yes,
And we had that before?
we did have that in the previous contract.
Okay, all right. And if it is, right now, I think it's a committee of one, but maybe, we have Edgewood too. And so is it one seat for Edgewood, one seat for UP, or between the two we decide who gets to sit in the seat?
No, I think it's for both cities to,
Okay. Do we on our team agree with that?
So, I mean, if you start with the first sentence there, the city may participate with other cities that contract with the PCSD and it's like no more than 2 representatives. So if it's us and Edgewood, there's a seat between us, there's a seat between Edgewood.
Okay.
We would have to have that discussion with Edgewood saying, hey, do you want a seat? Yeah. Do you want a seat? Yeah.
And
Together
then-
with any other cities that might be out there that have some small.
And that illustration, our expectation is 2 seats then, is that right?
That we would have one physical seat.
We would have
The
a
city
UP seat, they would have a Edgewood seat if both parties wanted that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to page 11, section 12A, contract administration. A talks about the city council's responsibility. Somebody help me understand what that means, and particularly as it relates to confidential matters.
That's some of the legacy language that goes all the way back to our first agreement, 1997.
Okay.
And it was started with the approach of we'll take out the stuff that's broken and fix it, and if it's not broke, we'll leave it in.
Okay.
So in terms of the bigger policy-related issues, yes, it recognizes that City Council still has a seat at the table. The very next paragraph recognizes that the day-to-day operations fall at the city staff administrative level.
So you don't have a definition at hand of what confidential matters might mean and why the council would be involved in such things?
No, and like I said, that was the one, I think, I could cross-check it with the 97 agreement that's soon to be replaced if council were to go forward on this, and we can check with that in advance of final passage, but I think that's actual legacy language from before.
Okay, that's just curious. I find that interesting, but if we're just carrying it forward because, as you said, it ain't broke.
There's a couple throughout the agreement that are like that.
Okay, good enough. I'm almost done, Mayor. Then let's go to Exhibit A2 in the back. And I think this A2 looks like it's part of the contract. And this is the A1 is a 1/4 summary, A2 is a 3/4 summary, and everything's multiplied times 3 except for the credit for unincorporated responses. But we do use an illustration of a credit for unincorporated responses, and it's the same number as 1 month credit. Was that deliberate, or, and it apparently is a credit we're not likely to get because, or need because we don't do that anymore. So maybe it doesn't matter, but I don't know about having an illustration that might be wrong in the summary. I don't know. Leave that to you folks. That's the only thing that might be a correction.
Okay.
And I think it's generally speaking a good document. I'm sure there's more things that I could suggest tweaking.
Just to be clear, you're referring to the $296.07 reference?
Yeah. And it's the same number that's on the 1/4 number. So anyhow, but it's not a big deal by any means. Just we don't want it to be a big deal if it might be. So, yeah. Okay. Great. Cool. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome, Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple comments / questions here. First, I noticed on pages 3, 4, there's a whole list of services the county provides, that additional, which include investigations, SWAT, dive team, et cetera, which I think is great. That's a great benefit of the contract. Are you aware of any gain or loss of services from last contract to this one, or is that just? Same language as before. Okay, thank you. Now, one question I do have is one of the benefits of the old contract I understood to be, I've never actually seen the old contract, is that there is basically a liability coverage by Pierce County for the actions of its officers. I am not seeing that in the language here. If I look at paragraph 14, indemnification and defense, it seems really kind of vague to me as to who is actually responsible if there's misconduct by an officer. Could you clarify that?
The Section 14 language is a slight modification from what the prior contract is. However, the effect of the language between old 14 and new 14 is effectively the same. What old 14 had said, it said the city shall hold harmless Pierce County for laundry list of acts. It then would say in the very next paragraph, the county shall hold the city harmless for insert laundry list of acts. This was simplified to squish that each party will hold each other harmless and to otherwise simplify the drafting of that. But this had also separately gone through and separately been reviewed both by our internal risk team as well, and if I'm not mistaken, by our by the risk pool. Okay. So the effect is effectively unchanged, although there are some word changes along the line.
Okay, but then back to my second question. If there's misconduct by an officer, is the city or the county or who is held responsible for liability and defense?
If there's misconduct by the officer, my position is that the county is responsible unless the city had something to do with that deputy's misconduct. Anyway, but the general rule is it's the county.
So that's your opinion.
That's
and I'm
my
just
opinion.
concerned if the county would come up with a different opinion based on this language.
Yeah.
Is there some way we can get that clarified or looked into?
We'll do some clarification in advance.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Grassi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you to the team. I know I've been the nag about this in our briefings, but public safety is a passion, as you know, of mine, and I take it very seriously that as a council, this is one of our main duties to keep our citizens safe. And I just want to say thank you to our chief and our public safety team. You do an excellent job. In case you missed it, Jennifer said, officers compete to come here, and they really do. And that's a testament to our staff, to our city, our citizens. And I also want to publicly say thank you to our citizens that worked so hard on the public safety levy, but also our citizens that passed this and were able to be here now. I think that this is incredible. That piece of it to get to this new contract is huge. One question, just clarifying, and again, in page 4J, staffing vacancies, in the event that the Pierce County Sheriff's Department incurs a significant increase in staffing vacancies, the Sheriff's Department will maintain the authority to reasonably reduce service levels to the city for purposes of this section, and it goes on. Is there any definitive amount of significant staffing vacancies? Because I see as they are in one now and we're doing that significant investment for recruiting, I'm wondering how long that buys us in, for lack of a better term, of this staffing vacancy. I also see a 2 business day notice, which seems a little shy of notice to pull one of our officers.
We worked pretty hard on that language. It's not uncommon, and King County has what they call a shared vacancy because of the legislative actions that impacts on the staffing in the state of Washington, the mass exodus of officers out of the state. people were scrambling to try to get bodies, and especially in our contract agencies, looking for ways to, from a higher level, for the command staff to work with the city manager and the police chief to make sure that we adequately staff all of the cities within the county's contract relationships in a fair way. And so I think the language in there, Matt, about the city, the sheriff and the city manager will meet was we have some formula and some ratios in there that we worked pretty hard on, but that would be the making sure that everyone was comfortable with whatever shared vacancy. And again, that would be if we had another significant issue like what we saw, what was that, 2021?
Yeah.
Okay. Matt, did you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
actually, and if you can go back, I was going to say, if you can go back to the initial deal points, one of the initial points that when we entered negotiations with the county on this, we took the approach, look, we're part of one team. Your deputies are our deputies, and there's a right and an obligation ultimately to share. If you guys have vacancies system-wide, then we should have a chat regarding that. And this is one of those clauses, like I said, that was extensively negotiated, that did require a confer. You'll note it's buried in the middle of the section in there that speaks to, in the event Sheriff's Department reduces service levels to under the vacancy percentage of the city, will not exceed the vacancy percentage of similarly unavailable employees. The idea being, if the county is seeing these reductions, they made it very clear, you can't hold on to your deputies, UP. You guys have to equally share on that. And so we spent extensive amount of time negotiating that.
Okay. But no more specific language to significant increase.
I won't indulge you with the drafts. I will tell you.
That's as close as we could get.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's as close as we're getting.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay. I have a few questions.
Just making sure that you know how to do it.
I'm going to go ahead and go now.
Please.
On page, this is on the memo, and based on CPIU, is there I didn't see a maximum, which I've found that to be useful when you have uncertain times like we do. You don't know when they can get up to 12%. So, usually I find it in major contracts to have a maximum. Why are we not having a maximum here?
We approach this very much as a partnership, and that we are in this together, and that was the whole basis of this discussion. And we knew that we wanted to get rid of the minimum, because if you look back historically, we were paying 3%, and it wasn't very often that we were hitting 3% inflationary, and this compounds on each other. So, and it's very rare that it was above 5%. So yes, we've had this recent history of it being like that, but in the past it generally hasn't been. In the final analysis, if the county feels that they are subsidizing us because their costs are growing more than 5%, they're going to terminate the contract or try to renegotiate. Okay. So we want to make sure as we approach this, they felt like, aha, UP is contributing towards our recruitment issue. UP is willing to pay what we owe, as it may be for an officer. So it's overall philosophy change.
Fair enough. Thank you. On page 3, mention that there's a copy of current city police procedures on file at City Hall for city's reference. Who can we, if any council member wanted to go and look at that, who do we ask? City clerk? Is V, excuse me.
V.
On page 3, V.
V.
Or I should say, yeah.
For the city's reference, notify the city manager.
You see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see it now?
You just found it.
V.
So any council member, who do we ask for that?
It'd be the city clerk.
Is that electronically or hard copy only?
It would depend on which format the city clerk would otherwise retain it on.
Okay. Would you, and
We
I'm
can
sure
double check, yeah.
anybody else would like to have electronically sent to me, if it's possible. If not, I know where to get it. Okay. Then, page number 4, I talked about administrative professional staff, and the county, it says the county will provide an office assistant to serve as the city's professional support staff. So it's described in Exhibit A, which we'll go to, but did we request that, or is that a mandatory, you will have this assistant?
Mm-hmm. That's our Leslie Wheeler, who works the front desk
We
at our police
requested that?
department, and she has been a part of the contract since inception in 1997.
Okay, and you just answered another question, who is it currently? Okay. Dan, I'm getting there. I don't have many as Councilmember Worthington. He answered half of my questions. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay, so on Exhibit A3, hire incentive, it talked about the 10,000 and all that. So when does this get paid? And it gets paid to the county, and I understand that, but the hire incentive is when they go through probation right away. When is it paid off? I mean, paid to them? When do we have to pay the county, I should say?
So originally it was, we were going to pay them $200,000 up front. We negotiated to where it's going to be when we receive the officers. That's when $100,000 this year and $100,000 next year.
Okay, got it. And then on this purchase of additional services on page A3, additional services rates, excuse me, that's all the 1.4 million plus. That's on top of the 4.5 million contract, correct? Exhibit A3 at the end, grand total, 1.4 plus.
And what's your question about it?
That's on top of the 4.5 million that we have discussed for the whole contract? Or is that included in that 4.5 million?
Yes.
That 1.4 is part of the startup costs.
It doesn't. Yeah, it does include the service period from November to December for those new officers. So it's, yeah.
So you have the 4 million, whatever, I can't remember the exact
4.5
number.
plus.
And then I showed you a number. This is divided a little bit differently. This
Okay,
includes the
so
one-time
then the
cost.
one-time cost you showed before includes that. The 1.5
Yes.
includes this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm almost done. And then I think you just answered my last question. Page 1 on the memorandum of agreement. It's kind of the last page. MOA, section 4. And it says confer by December 31st, 2004 on how the remaining funds will be spent by the county to provide the city with enhanced law enforcement services. So two things. What remaining funds? Are we talking about the 1.5?
This is the 100,000.
The 100,000. And then it says to be spent by this county to provide city with enhanced law enforcement services. Is enhanced law enforcement services different from the additional services?
It just means the 4 additional officers that we'll receive.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Councilmember Boykin?
Thank you very much,
Before we-
Mayor.
Excuse me, Councilmember.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to extend this meeting by 15 minutes.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Councilmember Boykin?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a clarifying question. It's in regard to the letter that Steve Sugg shared with Ed Troyer. And in the second paragraph where it talks about the city expressly looking for 3 additional deputies and 1 additional sergeant. in the presentation, we've talked about 4 officers in 2024, 4 officers in 2025. And I just wanted to find out, are we talking about really a sergeant leadership specifically as a result of what the ask has been, as my first clarifying question?
Yes, so the three plus 1 would be 4 for 2024 in that one leadership position.
Okay. And then my follow-up question is, in terms of that leadership position, as we know we're not going to have rookies, not my term, but a term I heard introduced, I just want to be sure that in asking about that, it certainly means seasoned officers. So if you can you share a little bit about how that leadership selection would come about?
Yes, so positions in University Place for deputy or for sergeant are opened up competitively within the larger sheriff's department, and those positions are highly sought after. The sergeant is no exception. So it's a highly covetable workstation within the county, and I want to give credit to Chief Burke, who has been able to attract a lot of people that want to come and work for him in University Place. So we're really excited. In fact, we were visiting this afternoon about some of the sergeant prospects, but they will compete for those spots, just like the deputies, the new officer positions that will come in November.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You bet.
Thank you.
No more questions, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
No more questions.
Oh, no more. I thought you said one more.
Oh, I thought you did too.
No.
Okay, Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple questions from some previous experiences to make sure that I understand what's in the contract. When a sheriff officer
Can you
that...
move the mic up to you?
Okay. How about now? Is that better?
yes.
When an officer goes into disciplinary action, or how is the City of University Place within the policies of the sheriff? I know they have their policies. Do we have any saying the outcomes or any accountability to that, or is it strictly placed into the Pierce County Sheriff's HR policies and procedures?
Yeah, the Sheriff's Department would manage, so the chief and his sergeants would be managing their people, discipline, anything that would come about in routine management of people. If there was a circumstance that rose to the occasion where we needed to invite an individual to find a different workstation within the county, that would be something that the chief and the city manager would confer on, and that has occurred over the last 27 years.
Right, okay. I just would like University Place to have a say and a buy-in as to if an officer unfortunately needs to come to that point.
This is really one of the beauties of being a contract city. There's a lot of people that work in the Sheriff's Department, and there's a lot of really good fit for people to come to the City of University Place. In many of our smaller cities that don't have a contract, they don't have that option. Once they hire someone, they're there. Having a model where you can bring in and recruit people for those positions is really unique and covetable, I think. One of the great things about contracting.
Okay, and my last concern is investigative services, to ensure that that continues as a strong partnership, and that the investigation from City of University Place doesn't sometimes get, lower prioritization, because, the county has, I think, some bigger issues at times that can push ours to the side, to make sure that stays strong and intact, and our investigator can work and within our own city's elements of how we prioritize our cases.
Absolutely, and I know our city attorney added language in there to this particular section to ensure that our cases would be at level with the county cases.
Right.
Again, it's to the relationship of our command staff here locally. They are the people who get those relationships built with the investigative services downtown. We have a lot of detectives who are waiting for us to bring a detective here because they want to come and work in University Place. The patrol team has really good relationships with those folks down in the Criminal Investigations Bureau, and I feel that those relationships, our people, our patrol people and our sergeant and our chief, those relationships help foster better service levels and, to your point, making sure that those cases get worked. And we have always had really good service from the sheriff's office when we need those investigative services.
Okay, right, thank you.
Very good, Ms. Cussy.
Yes, I am.
Okay, anybody else? Going once, going twice? Since there's no more business to discuss, the meeting is now adjourned.